Hey, welcome to another episode of the Dreamer Comics podcast, where your comic book dreams become reality. This week, I have this mind-blowingly awesome guest in Ryan Cady.
That was a super nice thing to say.
It's
It
true.
just really threw me off guard. That's where we're going to start. All right.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking comics, talking Top Cow, talking all these new projects you have going on.
No, thanks for having me on, man. I mean, obviously, I'm happy to talk comics with you anytime.
Anytime?
Off camera or on camera.
I like the subtle arm touch.
I'll go less subtle.
I love it. So let's jump right into it.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us about your new project.
Yeah, the big one on my plate right now is I have my first creator-owned ongoing series at Top Cow Image, and it's called Infinite Dark. It's a sci-fi horror series with artist Andrea Muti. He's done a bunch of stuff for Dark Horse, Vertigo, DC, and a couple other books at Top Cow and stuff. K. Michael Russell's coloring it. He's amazing, and Alex Liu is helping out with story editing. It's my elevator pitch is like the universe ended. We found a way to survive, and what is it like living in a non-reality? You know, what is all that's left is this like ghost town space station. There's only 2,000 people left in all of existence, and a murder happens.
Okay.
And I'm being really bad at it because it's really hard because it's horror. Like, I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
But there are.
Is it like a murder mystery type thing?
It is not really a murder mystery. It is a. There is an outside. Oh man, how do I not spoil this? I'm so bad at pitching my own book. Basically, you've got all these people there, and it's like a powder keg of like survivor's guilt and horror and like just trying to survive and wait for what comes next. And when someone gets murdered, it's sort of like the reason for this murder is something from beyond.
Okay. Very mysterious.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's. I mean, if I do it right, it will read like Alien, and obviously there's elements of Event Horizon and a lot of the classic sci-fi horror stuff.
So it's like a space story where they're like in space because the universe is literally ended.
Yeah, so like I didn't want to get too big into the nitty-gritty science because I butcher it really poorly. But do you know the entropy, like the heat death of the universe?
No, explain it to me.
It's like Morrison plays with it in Final Crisis, but like basically all chemical reactions and physical interactions tend towards entropy.
Okay.
And basically like billions of years from now, there won't be any more matter or energy left in the universe. There'll be what's called heat death, and
Okay.
the universe will end like slowly and peter off. And so the premise for Infinite Dark is that this happens much. This is like the setup is that this happens much sooner than we thought. Maybe
Okay.
like 10, 20,000 years from now.
Okay.
And so humanity builds this vessel called the Orpheus to survive that, and it works. They build this station that can exist in
Outside
it's
of
not space, like it's non-reality, and it builds. It's got a field it can project, and it can exist. But they build it, and they underestimate the speed at which entropy is occurring, and they can't get colonists onto the station. So they've got this massive station designed for tens of thousands of people,
But only a few
and there's
people.
only like 2,000 on it, like staff. And so these people whose whole job it was to get more people on board are the only people left, and it's them contending with that guilt and that fear
Of like we thought we had it, but we didn't.
yeah, and also of course the fact that there's something outside making them do stuff.
Ooh. Scary.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to be too vague. It's so bad. Yeah.
No, so like where did the idea come from? Like walk me through how the book like came to be.
I mean, heat death scares the shit out of me. I can curse on this thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're good.
So like I don't remember when I learned about heat death, probably in like high school physics or something like that. But I've always been like, that's nightmarish because the thing that I like the idea is that humanity could survive, right? Like barring there's a billion disasters that could end us as a species, but this idea that we could survive past our planet, past our solar system forever, but then there's this fundamental aspect of the universe that we couldn't survive, and that keeps me up at night. And I was like, well, what if we found a way to survive that? Which is like ultimately the slightly hopeful, like optimistic kernel at the core of this dreary, terrifying series I'm trying to write is that survival is a virtue, and
Yep.
when we can escape anything. except of course the thing that's lurking out in the void at the end of the universe.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's a mindset, you know. It's really fascinating because sometimes you live on in different ways past yourself. You know, you think we only have a certain amount of lifespan, but if you write a book, that's you living on past
Yes,
your
absolutely.
your term. If you have kids, that's you living on past your lifetime, and there's a lot that's not exactly science, but it's weird stuff that we can't explain. That's
Yeah.
kind of us procreating, us continuing to move on, and always finding a way to survive.
We're all just trying to escape death, futilely, helplessly, escaping death.
That's it.
But no, I mean, I ultimately, like, that makes it sound so bleak, and I do want it to be kind of a bleak story, but I'm trying to tell ultimately like a horror story with a hopeful core. I hope, through the characters, especially the main character. Her name is Deva. She's like the security director for the station, and I really want, through her, is like this examination of survivor's guilt, and also like survival as a virtue of the human struggle to subsist and exist and move on.
So how did this book come to be? Like, who did you talk to make it happen? Like,
Sorry.
what was the pitch? Like, what was?
Well, no. So I sort of, I'd been talking to Andrea for a while about doing something together, and I'd sent him a couple pitches, and they just hadn't quite meshed. And I've had this like half kernel, and then one day, I spent 2017 living in New York City.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was a really, really rough time for me. I fell into like a pretty bleak depression, and a lot of stuff went bad, and so I was just like, probably just being dumb and emo one night, listening to stupid emo music, and I was just like reflecting on stuff, and I kind of had heat death as an element in an earlier story that I had to scrap completely, but I was kind of clinging to this idea of this setting for a horror story, and I just sort of plugged in this, like, just started plugging in characters and ideas, and sort of formed this really rough pitch, and I sent it to Andrea, and it was like, I'd sent him maybe like 3 or 4 pitches, and they just hadn't clicked. I sent it to him, and right away he was just like super enthusiastic. We just clicked on it.
Nice,
It
and
was
he
the
was
story I
like,
wanted
"All right,
to
let's
tell."
go."
Yeah, no, and that was last, it was like last June, and like he had like sketches ready. He sent them to me for SDCC, and I showed them to Top Cow. I mean, I'm pretty close with people there, so we'd already talked about it, but they were already kind of into it, and so we've just been kind of slowly getting it going in the background since then.
Nice. And how many issues is it going to be? What's the plan with it?
So it's 4-issue arcs.
Okay.
Right now we have it slated for ongoing. It's all going to depend on how feasibly long we can produce it.
Yeah, of course.
I originally conceived it as a miniseries. It's just like 4 issues. But right now I have another 2 arcs planned. So
Okay.
it
So
could
at
go
least
on.
12,
It could go on
20 for as long as
people buy it.
That's it.
So.
As long as people are into it and
Yeah.
going out there and supporting the book, that's what it's all about.
Exactly.
And this is your first thing. What you've done a bunch of other things with Magdalena and Top Now, and what's that been like? What's your experience been like there?
I mean, it's a different kind of anxiety, right? Like, the cool thing about creator-owned stuff is that it's all me, right, and my collaborators. But it's like sink or swim on your own, and you're not writing this thing to try and please anybody else, except maybe like an audience. But you're just sort of throwing yourself out there, and that's scary because then it's all on you. But that's also kind of freeing. Whereas, you don't
have a direction, someone telling you have to go in this direction.
Exactly.
And there's this character has to be set up for this, which occurs in this issue down the line, and you don't have to worry about that. You get to decide those things. And
yeah, like I just wrote 5 issues of the Warframe official comic for the video game at Top Cow, and that was a blast. It was a really fun world to play in, but ultimately I'm beholden to all the Warframe fans, everybody at the company, everything that's been set up from the games, and that's a lot to like merge into your head and make work on the script. There's a lot of goals to meet.
Yeah, it's definitely a different beast when you're doing creator-owned or working for somebody else, and they're telling you, hey, listen, no, you can't use that character, you can't use this, you can't say that, he would not say that, and you're like, no, this is what he says, because the story needs him to say it. You're like, no. And there can go down some fun holes that way.
Yeah, I try not to, especially with for hire, like, I try not to fight editors on it, like, because that's just I did a little editorial for a while for Top Cow back in the day, and it's like you're beholden to so many people above you, and ultimately it's when it's for hire, it's the company's gig, so I'm not precious about it, but it is kind of nice to not be limited by that at all, just play in my sandbox.
That's exciting. So how did you, like, what was your process getting started in comics?
Wow. I mean, I have like the story. Do you want? Is that like weird?
Jump in.
To tell the story?
No, tell me the whole story.
So I've like always read comics, obviously. I think, everything here and there. But I didn't start really, like, earnestly collecting single issues, because before then it'd be, like, trade paperbacks or random things here and there. But following monthly regularly, I didn't start doing that until New 52 happened at DC. So that was when I was like, I'm going to really commit to single issue collections. And a lot of my friends started collecting single issues again at that time, so it was a big thing for all of us. And so with that, there were a lot of signings with New 52, like at local stores, and I kind of realized, I was like, holy shit, like, this is a job. Like, this guy gets to do this for a living. He's writing for a living. And I'd been writing lots of short stories. I want to do this, I was, and I sort of found there's some of, like, my short story open call groups, like open calls for comic scripts, and I wrote, like, a couple little things for Arcana Studio, and like a random Irish publisher, like a random short story thing for a comic, and it was just like little things, but I wasn't seeing how that was going to connect, and so when I was in college, I was like, well, you get internships. So one day, I sent emails to everyone I could think of, and I was ready to even, like, go across the country if I had to, but that was not ideal, and I didn't get a lot of responses. So one day I, like, printed out all these, like, little resumes, and I drove all over downtown LA. I was going to UC Irvine at the time, so I was, like, all the way out in Orange County, but I drove out here, and I went to any comic company I could think of to find in Los Angeles. I went to Boom, I went to Bongo, I tried to find Top Cow. I think I might have been under the impression that Image still had their Century City office at this time, so I was, like, looking for Image. And anywhere I went, I know I was trying to give these resumes out. Like, either I couldn't find the place, or I went there and they were like, we don't really do interns. And so I was, like, super dejected, and I went home, and, like, literally, this is why it's so crazy, why it's, like, the story, is that I went home that night, like, super fucking dejected. I'm like, this is it. And I had an email waiting for me from Top Cow.
That's so cool.
The editor I had emailed about maybe being an intern there, and she's like, hey, yeah, we might need an intern this summer. Like, we'll see. I'll get back to you in, like, a week. And so that's how I ended up. I was an intern at Top Cow for a while, and people left, and I was there doing, like, editorial assistant work and assistant editor work and doing that. And then after a while of that, I just knew I was writing the whole time. And then after that, I was like, I need to write full time. Yeah.
Start the transition process. Yeah. And it's been working out great for you.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Like, what was your first book that you ended up writing for Top Cow? Like, what was?
It was Aphrodite 9 Hidden Files.
Okay.
I very much distinctly remember because Seek.
Of course.
Totally. So we were having a meeting, and it was everybody at Top Cow, and then me and Seek were, like, the two. I was the intern. He was the part-time marketing guy. And Hawkins came in, and he was talking about writing Aphrodite 9. And he was like, we need to do one of these fact books. And he was like, and he looked at us, and he goes, you two can write it. And that was it. Like, and that was the first thing. And we ended up doing that, and I did a couple other Hidden Files books. And then Top Cow does that talent hunt every year. And 2014, I think, was the year I was in charge of it. They just, like, had me do it because they were short staffed or whatever. I mean, Matt and Mark still picked the winners, but I was in charge of, like, running it and narrowing it all down.
Yeah, you have to at least pass the gates.
Yeah, exactly. I was the gatekeeper.
You have. That's what I mean. Seek did the same thing when he was there. He was the gatekeeper too, and he knows. He said, "Listen, they said you have to look for this, and this, and if it doesn't have this, it's a no." And that's how it went. And if there were good pitches, they saw the light of day.
Yeah, exactly.
They got to the final round, and
it's still going on.
Yeah.
But that year, 2014, they put me, they had me handle it, and when it was done, Matt was like, "Look, you did a really good job. Pick one of the artists and write a short story, and you can do one." And so I did, like, a Magdalena short with Phil Seavey, and so that's sort of like the first real comic I did. Or whatever.
I love it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was fun. Like, honestly, we ended up putting it in the back of the Magdalena trade that me, Teeny, and Christian did, and it was, like, really funny to see it collected in trade. I was like, oh, how far we've come.
It was really cool to see, because I remember you from years ago when you came to WonderCon, and you were, like, this like, super excited, like, kid looking for work, looking for internships, everything.
Jaded.
And then we had the writer's room, a few weeks ago, and Matt was just like there's, like, two guys who I just trust unequivocally with story, and it's Ryan and Brian, and he just spoke so highly of you, so it was cool to see that and see you get the praise that you've been working hard to get.
Yeah, I've suckered him over years of working closely with Matt Hawkins. I've convinced him that I'm a talented writer, and it's working out well for me.
I love it, man. So because I know you have, like, a million different process is to
Sure.
writing. What's the process like for you for like writing a book? Like, what break it down for me? Like,
Yeah.
okay, issue 1. Where do you start?
So I like to do I do a lot of like broad outlines. Usually, especially like with Infinite Dark and a couple other books, you know, Alex Liu is story editing me, so I'll give him a call and I'll be like, hey, I'm gonna send you this like rough outline. Like, what do you think? And we'll talk it over, or I'll like bounce ideas off friends, or just kind of like sit in like a weird room rereading my own outline like a weirdo over and over again. But I'll write like a sort of a broad, detailed outline, like almost like a pitch or a proposal. I actually really like to work off pitches.
Yeah.
Like when I don't know how many other writers are this way, but when you make the pitch, it's kind of like it's almost separate from the story. You're just like, this is my thing to get someone to buy this,
Yep.
so I can make it. Like, I want to make this thing. This is just the proposal. But I like to go back always to that and almost treat it like past me. It's like assigning me this work, and so I have to work off that. So like I'll do.
Take elements from it and
Yeah, and like change it a little bit, but depending on which company, I can't change it as much. So I'll do a detailed, issue outline, and then I'll go when I'm writing like the first issue script. What I'll do is I'll do like page breakdowns, and I'll write like a super loose script, and I'll just I think Hawkins does something similar where I will just like the point is just to get the pages out. So even if the panel breakdowns suck, or the dialogue's bad, or I don't write dialogue, it's just to get the page breakdown going. And so I'll have this really rough draft that's like, sometimes it'll actually be good, and I can just work off it. But most of the time, it's crap, and I have to go back and change everything. But I've got that full skeleton there, and then I can go back and put real, like, there'll be like 1-sentence panel descriptions that barely mean anything, but I'll go back in and put the real descriptions for the artist and kind of coordinate and update everything. And then after that, I'll go back and revise and put real dialogue, and then I'll have like an actual pitch, and then I'll get input from my editors or whatever, and then I'll go back and finally revise it, and then the book then I'll send it to the artist maybe, and then if they have notes and ideas, I'll change it based on what they want to draw. So
what's your relationship like with the artist? Like, what do you just say, hey, listen, this is my idea, run with it, or do you kind of say like, hey, listen, no,
fuck that, no way. Like, yeah, I every email to artists I send is always like, but hey man, like whatever you want to draw, like if you want to, cause like obviously because it's collaborative, right? Like there's the whole like we're co-creating this together.
Of course.
Even if it was like my idea and I was paying them a 100% for higher rate, that we're still collaborating and co-creating.
Absolutely.
But also like they know better than me.
Yeah.
100% of the time they know better to draw, and if I have
but it's interesting because I think sometimes you're still the storyteller, and you still have to make sure the details are in the panel. You still have to check
Definitely.
the work and have to make sure that it's done the right way.
For sure.
And so it's not that you don't trust them, but I'm very similar. I trust my artists like unequivocally, but I still have to go back and be like, you wrote this just doesn't work. Like you put this on an image screen in the background, like no, just stop that. And so I have to be real about it, and sometimes and be like, listen, this works, this doesn't work, and like, but trust them for like not being an over the camera shot, over the shoulder shot if they want to change it to that shot overhead, and let the artist kind of run.
Oh, that can't be like that because like it's not actually space.
We don't have
like,
gravity
this doesn't-
anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be like that, and it'll be like, oh man, but it looks so cool, and I'll be like, well, let's find a way that we can work that shot in later because I like his ideas and I want him to draw the cool thing. But yeah, you have to edit the world, the verisimilitude,
Exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that's like super important. And you've been working at Top Cow for I don't even know how long now. It must have been 5-6 years.
Yeah, I mean like
No, it must be 7 or.
Oh, it can't be that long. Good God.
It must be 6.
2013, I think.
Okay, so
was
it's 5 years.
When I started as an intern, yeah.
What has it been like? What has Top Cow kind of meant to you as a person?
I mean, there was a while. I mean, obviously, they gave me everything, like all my start, and I poured my heart and soul into working there and working with them and getting that start there. I mean, there was a little while when I was first transitioning out where it was kind of like a chip on my shoulder, where like I sometimes in this industry it's hard to get work if you were an editor at any point. There's a false perception among some publishers and editors that editors are failed writers.
Yeah. And
so the idea that you would quit being an editor to write is like, oh, well, you're going to fail. You can't do it, which is bullshit. But, I because of that, I for sure, when I was leaving Top Cow to write full-time, had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about it, and I wanted to be, like, seen kind of distance myself from that past me. But that's that's fucking nonsense too, because I love all the work I've done at Top Count.
Yeah.
I love everybody there, and I'm proud of the projects we did. So I'm just now it feels like home.
That's good. I love it. I mean, it's funny. There is this stigma with editors and writers that like, oh, writers couldn't do editors' job and editors can't do writers' jobs, and they're like two separate things. But in reality, they're so closely tied together that if you understand one, you can understand the other, and you can understand what works and what doesn't work for each one. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I get why. There are certainly plenty of people who, like me, they're like, oh, the path to being a creator in comics is editorial, which is not true. You should go into it like editorial. You want editors to actually care about editing.
Yeah.
And so I get why that adds to the stigma. But like you said, it's so close to have that weird sort of false perception is pretty shitty.
Yeah. It's interesting because comic books is very much a relationship-based industry.
Yeah.
It's like, who do you know? Who are you talking to? Who do you know who I know so that they can qualify you? Oh, you know Phil. Oh, I love Phil. Like,
Right.
oh, I just had drinks with him last night. What's he up to? Oh, yeah, you were with him 2 weeks ago. That's cool. Like, now we're hanging out, so we'll tell Phil. And then it turns into, like, this whole... Like, because it really feels like a high school. Like, I always kind of mention this, but it always feels like it's like a small, very cliquey kind of thing, and like different
Really
people are in
cliquey.
different cliques at different times, and it's funny that's just how it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people think that it's like you have to just like write and put it in, and people you don't have to do that work, but that's half of the battle, you know.
Yeah, and regrettably, you have to have social skills. It's
do.
unfortunate.
In
really,
comic books,
for
what?
me.
What?
No, yeah, I mean, and I like, I'm sure you're the same way. I have like a list of people that I have to thank like every day
Of
for
course.
all the help they've given me in
Of
comics.
course,
You know,
it's true. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without those people around us.
Yeah.
Like, there's people who like I would still just be like a guy who wanted to write comic books if
100%.
like he didn't say, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, and it's crazy. So
Mm.
yeah. What so want to take a quick break and ask what are you reading now? Like, what is
Oh boy.
what is on the pile for you?
Well, let's see. I'm in like a weird, like a more Marvel phase right now, which is strange for me because I was always a big DC guy. But it's just sort of because a lot of my DC series I was really into sort of transitioned. Like I'm really into. I love X-Men Red.
Okay.
X-Men Red I think is like the best X-Men book we've had in like a billion years. And Astonishing X-Men, which just the new arc that just started with Rosenberg writing it. I'm still reading Miss Marvel after all these years. I still love it. I'm still reading out of Marvel. I'm still reading Green Arrow at DC. I love Green Arrow. I really like the Terrifics. I'm excited for all the new Vertigo stuff they just announced.
That'll be cool to see Vertigo coming back in general. It's just exciting.
I'm very excited for that. I like a lot of the Vault books. I like Heathen. I like Wasted Space a lot. Marisi and Hayden Sherman. And of course all the Image mainstays. I finally caught up on Saga the other day. I was like
nice.
2 trades behind, just letting them pile up. Still perfect. Still the best book.
I'm
in
4 trades
comics.
behind, so I'm there. I'm right with you.
Oh, it's good. It's a good catch up.
I know, right?
You'll love it.
I'm sure it'll take me like an hour, and I'll be like, "What? I have to wait another 2 years to get this much content again?"
It's so good. It's still so good. I hate it.
I know Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples are just amazing at what they do, and like from Why the Last Man to everything, it's just he finds a way to tell such powerful stories, and they have a system down that works for them, where they have they do their 1 issue a month, and then they take that month break or 2-month break. It's break, trade, break.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So they take 3 months so they can get caught up, and they don't have that kind of like under the gun pressure. And
well, and like talk about collaboration and synergy, like you and I were talking about earlier, like Fiona and Brian, that's just like that's in sync.
Yeah.
That book is just
comes out on time.
They're like one person making this book.
I know, it's crazy, and they're so talented at it, and it works flawlessly. It's something that's the reason it has a huge fan base.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a testament to both of them, and Image for putting it out.
Yeah, good call.
So, what's the process like for you when you have a book coming out? How do you tell people about it? What's the process like for you to market it, get it out there to fans?
I mean, there's the initial stage of like talking to the publisher, obviously, and like, okay, when is this going to be announced? Who's going to announce it? How's all that going to happen? Like for Infinite Dark, it was like a lot of talking about if we could get Sci-Fi Wire to make that announcement for us, and they did. And I'm really grateful, and it really worked out, and I hope that helped us reach more people. And then once it's been announced, it's sort of like a weird mix of like, okay, what friends and creators do I send this to? I don't want to send it to reviewers too soon because I want it to be in people's...
You don't want them to put it up and then there's no book to go buy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also, like, you don't want, you know, because orders, you know, happen like 3 months after the book gets announced.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, I don't want to do a big press push early on, and then once it's time for retailers to order the book, they're like, what was that?
What was it?
Didn't it come out already?
Yeah.
So right now, like, again, using like my Infinite Dark timeline, it's, you know, it's in solicits this month, and so like the final orders will happen in September. So, you know, right now it's getting it in friends' hands and certain reviewers and planning ahead and talking to people, and then in September is going to be a lot of like calling retailers and like doing that retailer outreach and
so you're going to pick up the phone one person at a time. Ask, call Midtown Comics, call Heidi Ho, call Comic Bug.
I'm not going to call Heidi Ho because you're involved with Heidi Ho and I hate you. No.
Not anymore, but they are still great people.
Okay. Then I like them absolutely. Yeah. Now I will absolutely call them. No, you're not involved. No. Yeah. I mean, you. I don't know. I don't know everybody who does that, but I know a lot of people do it, especially when it's creator owned. It's a personal thing. Just giving them a call and being like, look, what can I do to make you want to pick up more copies?
Yep.
Can I send you a PDF? Is there any way I can do a signing when I come through? Can I send you copies? What works? You know.
And that's the way to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's really tough because a lot of them don't give you the time of day because they get some of these calls, you know. And you have to kind of find a way to just incentivize them, you know, and tell them this is going to be like a thing,
right?
You know, and so that's part of the battle, you know.
Yeah, and you know, it's important in comics not to get dejected, right? Because everybody gets pitches rejected and gets ignored or slighted at parties or whatever, and you know, you never know like what, because like you said, it's such a relationship based industry. You know, you have to give people and companies and publishers and retailers the benefit of the doubt because you never know
what somebody's going through.
Yeah, what they're going through, like what their plate looks like, or why they have to reject a book or don't, or yada yada.
It's interesting because I've called places before, and like you'll be going through and you call 50 places in an hour or whatever, and everything will be going smoothly, and you'll get through sometimes, and sometimes you won't, and then one time you'll get a call and someone will pick up and they'll just be like, yeah, what? And then they'll give you attitude, and you'll be like, oh, hi, you know, I'm trying to talk to you about my book. They're like, not interested, and they just hang up, and you're just like, what the heck did I do to that guy? Like, and they like think it's their fault for getting rejected, but it's the reality is like that person has their own thing going on, and it's not up to you to.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, definitely they shouldn't be shitty, but also you don't know, like,
you don't know what's going on with
their
them.
mom might have just passed away or some crazy shit
never
like
know.
that. Yeah, or they're just having like a really rough day and they don't want to deal with you.
Exactly.
And you know, and for every and I don't say this to like belittle indie scene at all, but for every, you know, like top diamond publisher book person who's calling them, there's like, you know 20 or 30 other people who are like, hey, I'm self-publishing my book, can I get it on your shelves, which is a thing you should do, it is admirable, but they are like, they're inundated with everything, so they're not sure who you are and if they want to talk to you, and they might just be out of patience for the day, you know?
Exactly. And you're like, all right, well, I wasn't going to give your book a shot, but I'm still not going to give your book a shot. You know you can sell that because you can just say, hey, man, have you checked out the new issue of Miss Marvel? Have you checked out the new issue of Green Arrow? Bam, it's in your hand. And then you have to remember to go and sell another book that's not as big, you know? Like, it's like you have to like go out of your way to be like, oh, yeah, I did get one copy of this book. Now I have to learn this whole pitch to sell this one book so I can get it. Because it's really, there's a barrier to entry for comic books, and it's in the retailer's hands.
Right.
It's word of mouth, you know? It's like, have you heard about Walking Dead? Have you heard about Saga? It's like, have you, like, there's these conversations that happen all the time in the comic books industry. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, that's changing a little bit, you know, like planning ahead and thinking more about, Amazon sales and trade paperback sales and like other like the book market, you know, like I've got some projects in the works that are like aren't really targeting the direct comics market. I mean, it's a factor, but they're more focused on book market stuff or Amazon or digital things, you know. So it's
how's Amazon? I know Top Cow does like the best.
Top Cow does very well at Amazon. I have no idea. Like that's a Matt Hawkins brilliant move. I don't know. It's above my pay grade. But yeah, I've noticed that on all the books I've worked on or books that I haven't worked on there, like well, you know, I'm not an editor anymore. But the only thing I still edit is Step It and Linda Sedgwick on Sunstone and Bloodstain and Swing with Matt and Jenny.
I love Swing, man. Like
you a big Swing guy?
I thought it was done in like a tasteful way. Yeah. I really enjoyed that story, and like it didn't feel like it was like a story I'd heard before. It
Yeah.
felt like something new, felt something exciting. Not necessarily I'm going to go out and try swinging or anything like that, but
Right.
but it was a fun story to like kind of get behind in like in a medium that I love.
Well, I think that's the same reason like Sunstone,
Yeah.
touches people because it's like you might not have any interest in the BDSM scene or any of that stuff, but it's
Well
it's
executed,
tasteful
well
and
done.
earnest. It's really earnest. It's almost like it's wholesome at times, which I think is some people might balk at that adjective, but I think a lot of those books are wholesome content.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it too. Is why those books do so well on Amazon is being able to court. On Amazon, it's online. You can find people all over who might not want to pick that book up in person because of
Exactly.
weird stuff they have in their head or perception, or they stumble across it because of other stuff. And getting books that channel those markets is a smart tactic as well.
Absolutely. I think that's something that's like so important to find a way to talk to your audience and find your audience and see where they are and get out to them. Something I've been just kind of experimenting with recently is like email lists.
Yeah.
And like that's stuff that I'm kind of messing around with to figure out how to make how to get into fans, how to get into fans' hands, people who love
Yeah.
comic books and get them the content directly.
Mhm.
So I'd like to I also trust the retailer, but I also want to go around so that the customers are going in and picking up the book without the retailer telling
Right.
them what to do, because I think if you can get both of them being like, hey, have you heard of Saga? Actually, I came in here to pick up Saga.
Right.
It only reinforces your connection with that book, with
Mm.
that property. Oh, they were going to sell it to me anyway. That means it's the thing to get.
Right.
And it's like, it's the whole, like, your human mind is like, okay, my idea has been reinforced by this fact. So it's something that I'm kind of experimenting with. I know Matt Rosenberg, for example, who's on your shirt.
Yeah. This is not. I don't mean this to be mean. Matt and I are friends. It's like
But I know he does an email list.
Yeah.
I got his invitation to go and check out his Multiple Man book, and
which is an awesome book.
I
by
haven't
the
read
way.
it yet.
It's
but
real good.
But I mean, the fact that he's doing that, I'm like, okay, cool. Like I normally wouldn't pick that book up, but because like it was marketed to me in a tasteful way, I was like,
Right.
maybe I'll go in there and take a look when it comes out.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting how that whole thing works.
Yeah, and part of that is also like being accessible to fans on social media, which I don't think everyone is obligated to, or even everyone should do, but for certain people it works, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to engage with people and letting them know that you care, that they're reading your books.
Yeah. What's your strategy on social media? What's your
Dumb food, weird niche surrealist emo memes, pictures of me trying to look handsome, and then comics,
failing.
and then comics, and always failing. It's tense the trying. No, like honestly, I just try to be open, and I try not to be negative. Sometimes it's hard not to be negative about things, but I try to never ever be negative about comics.
Yep.
If I'm negative about politics or things that are going on in the world, I don't ever want to be negative about this industry.
Yeah,
and the
you
good,
always
the good
wanna
things
put it in
that
a good
happen.
light.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not gonna like fucking shit talk some other creator or some
Yeah.
crap like that.
Yeah, you can leave that for the back alleys.
So
and-
somebody that's
or
it's
bar fights.
drunk San Diego Comic Con parties.
I love it. So what's the process for you, like, because you're working on so many different pitches and ideas? How do you keep all that kind of in check for you?
I have I have like a daily to-do list, but I have this dumb Microsoft Excel sheet, and I call it my salsa scale of priority, where like
I've seen this.
You've seen the
posted
salsa scale.
I've seen the salsa scale priority.
Where I'll be like, okay, like I'll list like the project and like what I have to do on it, and then the priority of what I have to do it in scale of like mild, medium, picante, and then I'll have like if things are like, and that's just me being like dumb and trying to be cute. So it's like, oh look, this thing is gonna happen, but it's out of season. And I'm like, oh, so it's a hatch chile batch because hatch chiles are only in season some of the year. I'm like, oh, well, I'm waiting on this artist on this thing, but it's happening. I'm like, well, it's a smoky chipotle salsa because it's a slow burn, you know.
I love it. You have different.
It sounds so dumb.
I love it though. It's like, oh, the pages are in here, so it's like it'll get back to me, but it's still burning very slowly.
Yeah,
it's just coming back to me.
And then if it's just dead, I'm just like, oh, que frio, or like pico de gallo. It's not even salsa. It's just like
I love it.
some ingredients.
How did you just come up with that? Just coming out of fun?
Somebody posted like basically the same thing, but it was really serious.
Uh-huh.
It was like
Hot, cold.
It was just like hot, cold. Yeah, it was like hot, cold. Like, and it was like this is what I do when I have a lot of projects that I need to get organized. I don't even remember who it was, but I just did the same thing, and I just tweet replied. I was like, oh no way, me too, far out. But it zoomed in on the salsas thing, just to be a dick, and then I kept doing. It helps though, like it really does help. Like I check it every day. I'm like, okay, what's on the salsa scale?
Yeah. Oh wait, no, that doesn't need. I had a conversation yesterday. This needs to be.
I gotta update that. This is K-Frio now. It's dead.
This is Smoky Chipotle.
Yeah, and there is a section I keep at the bottom. I don't usually post it, but it's like probably dead but can't give up, and it's just it's a list of projects that have basically been killed by publishers, or like I can't get anywhere on them, but I can't quite give up hope. You know, it's like when you're at the restaurant and the waiter's not coming by to refill the salsa. Like, you've got a few chips left, but there's no more salsa in the bowl, and you're like, maybe the waiter's going to come by and refill the salsa, but like, you've already eaten your food, it's not happening.
You're like, but we need more salsa, though.
There's no more salsa. No mas.
You're like, but maybe there's a chance that they'll bring it by, they'll, like, remember.
You could always ask, but you want to do that? You want to be that guy? Come on.
I think you have to be asked sometimes. You have to be the squeaky wheel sometimes and be like, hey, remember that thing? We changed it. You might like this version better.
We bumped it up. It's very about comics now. We're no longer talking about the salsa. Well done.
Well, gotta go full circle, man. Always go full circle. So, what's like the next event for you on the horizon? Like, what's the next thing?
Well, my first Marvel work comes out in September.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I have a backup story in the. So I'm in the Old Man Logan annual.
Okay.
Ed Brisson is doing the main story, which is a story about the Punisher and Old Man Logan in the Old Man Logan timeline. And then me and Hayden Sherman, the artist on Wasted Space at Vault and Cold War at Aftershock, he and I are doing a backup story that's about like Old Man Punisher, but it's like in his it's like Gran Torino. Dark Knight Returns Punisher.
Okay.
It's like he's in like his
very dark, very gritty.
He's in like his late 50s, early 60s, and it is a bleak, bloody, brutal short. And I have had so much fun with it, and the pages look amazing. I'm fucking ecstatic to do this book. I really have kind of like fallen in love with the idea, and I'm like, maybe we can
get a
little series out of this. I don't know.
So
it's up to the fans.
What was the process like getting to work at Marvel? And this is your first
awesome.
thing. Like, how did that come to be? Like, because this is your first project. Did you hit up an editor? What was the?
Yeah. Well, I'd been talking to a few editors at Marvel for a while, and then I was in the DC Writers Workshop, so I was locked down for a while. I couldn't really talk to Marvel or anybody, and so I was sort of focusing on that, and then just creator-owned work, and then that kind of ended, and I got out of that, and I was talking to Marvel again and trying to get some things going, and out of the blue, one of the editors I've been talking to, it was really weird because it was honestly one of the easiest pitches I've ever had. He texted me and he's like, how do you feel about Old Man Logan? And we were just talking and talking about like what we could do, and I just pitched the whole idea over text, and it was just like we were just super in sync. It was just like, what about this? And he's like, that'd be dope, and I'd be like, okay, but this, and he's like, awesome, I think we can make that happen. And then since then it's just been like a dream, and like Hayden and I are super in sync on this book and like how we want it to look and the story, and I think it really meshes well.
And it's what's the issue it's in?
Old Man Logan Annual #1.
Ooh,
yeah, so
number one. So fancy in comic book terms.
So that's like my other big focus right now. But I'm working on a couple other creator-owned things that haven't been announced. I think one of my things should be announced sometime after San Diego. Then another won't be for a while, because sometimes in comics you work on something for like 2 years before you can talk about it.
Trust me, man. I think I have 3 or 4 projects like that I've just been working on, and I've just been like, all right, well, I'm going to put this back here, and as soon as I'm ready to talk about it, I'll let you know. They're done, though. But as soon as I'm allowed to talk about it, I'll let you know. And that's the process in comic books, and sometimes you can't talk about it until you can talk about it.
And then a couple other little creator-owned things, a couple of little for-hire things. But my big focus is Infinite Dark, because I want to get that first arc completely done by the time we launch. And so I've been like really focusing on that now that that Marvel short is rocking and rolling. So
what was the process like for you? Backing up a sec, going to the DC writers room.
Yeah.
What was the submission process? What was that like? What was the process like being in the room? Let's go through it all.
Yeah, I mean we can do it. So I was the first year that it was open to the public, I also submitted, and I didn't get in, and I was obviously like a little disheartened, but whatever. I mean, it was
you can't give up. I mean, Jim Lee, you see those rejection letters every few years. It's like.
Well, and I talked to the people who ran the program, and I kind of talked to them about their mission, and I felt more into it and really excited about it. And I talked to people who had done it, and I felt like I really wanted to do it even more. And so it actually really worked out. This is another dumb story, but so I'm friends with a couple people at DC, and, and one of the people is Sarah, who was in charge of the not in charge under handling us, I guess, for the talent program. And so I was coming when I visited from New York last July, I was in town, and they hadn't announced the winners yet, so I didn't know that I was in it, and I was talking to my other friend at DC, Andrea, and she was like, "Oh, you should come to the office, and me, you, and Sarah can grab lunch. That'll be really nice." And I'm like, "I would love to do that." And she's like, "Yeah, we'll give you a tour. It'll be great." And I'm like, "Okay." And the day I was supposed to go into the office with them, a friend texted me and was like, "Did you get into the DC workshop?" And I'm like, "No, I just have like a lunch with friends there." And they're like, "Oh," and they got really awkward. And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I heard emails went out today." And I was like, "Fuck." And I was like, "Am I gonna get a rejection letter from DC on my way to DC from the person I'm having lunch with?" And I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck. Or am I not gonna hear from them? I'm gonna spend all day like trying not all lunch being like, how do I not mention that I know I didn't win? And I got there and I looked around the office and I talked to some people, and then they were like, "Oh, you should meet Bobby, and she's in charge of like the talent program." I'm like, "Okay." And I went in there, and then I went in and I sat down and I was talking to them, and then they shut the door behind me, and they were like, "Oh, well, speaking of the talent program, we wanted to offer you a spot." They like ambushed me. It was like
awesome.
super sweet.
That's
they're
so
like,
cool.
They're like, "We wanted to offer you a spot," and I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, we sent out everyone else's like acceptance emails like 2 or 3 days later, but since we knew you were coming in, we wanted to like surprise you."
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really like it was like a lifetime highlight. Like,
that's so cool.
I
love it, man.
I nerded out really hard. I was so ecstatic, and I definitely like made an idiot out of myself. Like I'm like squirming in the chair. I'm like, "Really? You're not messing with me?"
I love it.
But yeah, no, and then the actual program was awesome.
Scott Snyder was running it, or
it was Scott. It was all over like a Skype program.
Okay.
Although like we would meet up at cons and stuff like that. But yeah, it was Scott, and then the writers in the program were me, Max Visaggio, Robert Jeffrey, Philip Kennedy Johnson, Sonia Anwar, Joe Esposito. I didn't forget anybody, right?
David Acampo? Was he?
No, he was the year before. Man, wow, I'm such a dick. Wow, I'm such a dick. No, wait, I didn't forget anybody. Yeah, I said, whatever. If I forgot someone, they can come beat me up, and I'll feel like such an asshole. I think I got everybody. But yeah, our writers' room was small. It was just us and then Scott, and then sometimes other people from DC would come in, and then the artists were separate doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But
because Sia was this year.
Yes,
right?
in the artists, I think, right?
Yeah.
I think she was this year.
Yeah.
I know Isaac, Goodhart, Domo. Maybe not Sia this year, actually. She might have been last year.
I thought she was this year. I could be wrong, but I thought she was this year.
I only know a couple of them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right on cue.
But no, it was awesome. Scott's, because he is a professor, so he's an amazing teacher, and the workshop was run really well, and they were very helpful, and it was just fun. I mean, like we were just writing DC books, obviously not published things, but writing scripts and working them out, workshopping them, and doing all this stuff. It was rad.
So what was the process like after you left the program? Were they like, okay, well now you know who to pitch to, or now you can pitch to this person?
A little bit like that. We have every the workshop does that showcase thing. Yeah. So it's the annuals of short stories. So that will be coming out and will be announced soonish.
Okay.
So I will have a story in there, and from there it's a matter of like talking to people once that comes out. With a lot of with Marvel and DC, but other for hire companies too. It's a lot of like, well, let's not talk about your second book until your first book is done. Yeah. Which is, I think, smart.
Yeah. You don't want to get people like, well, we didn't see this first thing. How come?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like why are we giving this guy a fucking series when he's only written a backup story and it hasn't even come out yet?
That's crazy. And then you've also done work for Boom with Adventure Time.
I did an Adventure Time short. That was really fun. I loved Adventure Time. So it was like a blast.
You're like, oh, you just get to write stuff I love.
Yeah, it's like awesome. And it was even the because they have the 2 Adventure Time series. They have Adventure Time and then Adventure Time Comics. And Adventure Time Comics, it doesn't count, so you can just like tell any story. It's just like go wild with it. So I was like, yeah, let's go like heavy metal with Adventure Time characters.
I love it.
Yeah, it was a blast. They were fun to work with.
That's really cool. So one question I'd like to ask all my all my writer friends and arter friends, what advice do you have out there for like aspiring creators? What advice would you give to a younger you or someone who's looking to break into comics?
There's all the obvious ones, right? There's read everything you can, write as much as you can. Everyone says write every day, but writing every day is really hard. You should try to write every day, and if you can't write, at least revise or give yourself notes or whatever. But then go to cons and meet people. But one I think doesn't get said a lot is make friends and co-creators and find a cohort that's your age, your level. When I first started going to cons, I would get really frustrated and confused and even a little like angry and entitled because I wanted to be friends with all these people who I perceived as being like a slightly one step above me, or like all these cool hip young people in comics. I wanted to be friends with all those people. I don't like there always seems like there was groups of people that I wanted to be friends with, and I didn't really start feeling at home in comics and start really hitting my good point of creating well until I started kind of getting over that and making friends with people like Teeny Howard, who I co-wrote Magdalena with, and Phil Seavey and Steve Fox and all these people that were sort of like coming up together and going to cons together and realizing we're creating sort of at the same level and at our same stage in our careers. And obviously everyone's a little different, but sort of like people that can support you and uplift you because they're going through the same stuff you are.
Yeah. They're like, oh, have you met this person? I can't do that right now because I have 12 other projects. But have you met Ryan?
Exactly.
Who's going to take care of this for you?
Yeah. Don't and also don't take it personally if you're like, I want to be friends with these cool people and they don't want to be friends with you. I mean, like, they don't mean it to be dicks. There are
people are busy. People have their own lives.
Yeah, people are busy, and like also like think about it how weird it can be, especially at a weird like super schmoozy event when you're just like, in your mind you are just chatting with your friends, but this this person comes up to you and wants to schmooze or get in because they're like, oh, this is like a comics creator clique, and it's like, no, like they're friends now.
Yeah.
Just make friends with people who are going through what you're going through, and you can support and uplift each other. And then, honestly, those people will pay attention to you because they're not dicks. They were just at a party,
It's really interesting because, it's like comic books is very interesting because one day someone can be your boss, and then the next day they can be working for you. Right. And that's just, it's just like, that's how how it works. You're like, oh, yeah, I was just working for you on this, but now I need an editor, so I'm calling you. And you're like, okay, well, it's so funny that's just how the industry works. And yeah.
It's a weird balance. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking comics, man.
I'm so sorry you had to deal with me.
It's been a pleasure,
amount of time. Thanks, man. Have a blast.